Welcome back to my channel and welcome to today's video. If you are a returning viewer, I'm happy to have you back, and I want to believe that this channel has genuinely added value to you. And if you're here for the first time, you're in the right place, because in this channel I am all about sharing content on personal, professional and career growth to help you build, or rather achieve, a rewarding and fulfilling career. So my name is Nelly, and today's video I want to talk to you, or I want to rather share with you those things that I believe that you should not mention in a job interview. And of course I also want to share with you how mentioning these things disadvantage you or lower your chances of being recommended or being selected when in a job interview. And I'm also going to share with you a bonus tip as I close this video, so I encourage you to watch this video till the end so you get to learn on those things that you should not mention in any interview, because they really decrease and really reduce your chances of passing a job interview, as I take you through how these statements affect you. And watch till the end, so I know you don't want to miss out on that bonus tip that I believe I should share with you in this video, just to help you as you go through your job search process. So without taking so much time, let's get into the first point for this video. So the first thing that you should not mention in a job interview are those statements that show you'll not stay in that job for a long time. So one thing you need to have at the back of your mind when interviewing is that an employer is always looking for somebody who will be able to stay in an organization for a reasonable period of time. This is because when the time that an employer keeps you is really an investment, because they'll train you, you'll go through different trainings within the organization, you'll be exposed to information about the organization, and of course you'll be paid a monthly salary, bonuses and all that. And all this investment that an employer puts in an employee, really they will not want to lose you after a very short time. So what are these statements that you should not mention in an interview that will show an employer that you're not willing, or you're not a person who will be there to stay for long? One of the statements is that when you ask that question, for instance, where do you see yourself in the next 3 or 5 years, then you say in the next 2 or even in the next 1 year, I see myself starting my own consultancy. So if you mention that, then somebody is already going to know that this is somebody who wants to build up their own business. While wanting to build up a business is not a bad thing, but at the point of employment, it's really not a good thing to mention, because nobody will want to hire you if they know you will not stay in the organization for long. So you see how such a statement, while it can be very good, it shows you're ambitious, it shows you're somebody who wants to be independent, which really is a good thing, but you see how it can work against you when it comes to looking for a job opportunity. Another statement here can be something like, while I know I'm not the best fit for this role, or while I know I would have applied for a different job, I want to use this job as a stepping stone to my next career. Now, which employer would really allow you to use that job as a stepping stone, or to use an opportunity to work for their company as a stepping stone? But these things, sometimes we say them unknowingly. Sometimes they just come out maybe without really knowing the repercussions. And that's why we are here to share this, or rather I'm here to share this type of information, so that you're able to know what you need to say and what you don't need to say in a job interview. So don't mention such statements like, I want to get into my business after this particular time, I want this job is going to be a stepping stone, or this job is going to be very important to prepare me for my next move. So please, next time you're in a job interview, avoid such statements in an interview. The next thing you should not mention is negative statements or bad mouthing, talking bad about your previous employer, your previous colleagues, or your previous place of work. You see, this automatically portrays you as a person who is negative, and nobody will want to have a person who will bring a negative energy, a negative vibe in their work environment. Employers are looking for people who know how to navigate through challenges, who appreciate challenges in each and every work environment, because for sure there's gonna be a challenge in each and every work environment, irrespective of how good the company look like. So the moment you begin to talk about talk negatively or badmouth your previous employer, then it shows that you're a person who do not know how to work well with a team. People begin to question your emotional intelligence. And one big thing that an employer will begin to question in an interview is loyalty. Are you a person who is loyal? How do you work well with a team? Even if you'd been wronged in your previous employment or even in your current job, because again, even if you're currently employed and you're looking for a job, there must have been something that triggered you. So while I'm not saying that you need to be dishonest about the real thing that is making you to look for a job, can you twist that statement and rather be able to show what value has your current job or your previous employment been able to add to you? And even if you got your previous colleague, your current or previous colleagues where you're working, if they were bad colleagues, it was a toxic environment, can you be able to show what is it that you did then to make the environment better, or rather leave it better than you found it? So this is really a red flag, a very serious red flag. Somebody who talks bad about a previous employer, about a previous boss, or about previous or current colleagues is really not the right person that an employer would want to bring into their team. The next thing is asking questions about pay or benefit. Well, this statement does not mean that you should not ask an employer what is the budget range for that job. If anything, it is your right to know what the budget range is, because I believe at the moment you set out to look for a job, really, you're a person who's selling a skill, who is selling a value for compensation, and you have all the right to be compensated. But asking or talking about a compensation, especially at the beginning or at the initial stages of an interview, is not a good thing. So let me show you how this works against you, and let me just start by some of the questions that can indicate maybe you're asking about pay, the compensation, and the benefits that are in for you. Number one thing, it exposes you, or it predisposes you, it makes you come out like a self-centered person, because you're only looking for what is it that is in for you, which might be a good thing. But I'm going to talk to you as we go through this video. I'm going to share with you at what point you need to bring up that salary conversation. So if you ask questions about how much does this job pay when you're just starting an interview, after how long does someone get promoted in this job, what are the other non-monetary packages like, does this organization offer things like vacation for employees? While those are good things for you to be comfortable and be happy in your job, but there's a right time to ask them in an interview, and there's a good way to ask them. And now the best time to ask them is when the interviewers bring that conversation, and that time that you're going to be asked this question of, now how much are you looking for, and if you get this job, how much would you be asking us for, how much should we pay you? So that's a good time for you to mention that salary that you're looking for, or even to give a range. While I'm looking for an increase of 30% from my current pay, I will also appreciate to know the budget that the company is working with, because you have a right to know anyway. But if you bring it so early, even before you are asked, then it shows that you're a person who is only looking for what is in it for me, and you're not really considering the employer side. The next thing you should never mention is I don't know, or I can't answer that. This usually happens especially when you're asked a question. So and really the truth is, not every time in an interview you are going to be asked questions that you know. There's so many times that you're asked things that you know, but one thing I've always believed, things that you don't know, that rather one thing I've always believed in is that there's a way that you can answer a question positively even if you do not know it, especially if you're a professional who's experienced, or even if you're just a college graduate, a fresh graduate getting into the job market. But the least thing you'll want to say in an interview is that I don't know an answer to that question. So what you can do when you ask a question and you don't know that question, the best thing to do, of course, is to ask for more time if you think it is something that you can think through, and by the end of the interview you can give that answer. So you can ask for more time, and you can say maybe things like it's okay, you can say things like, you can give me time and I can answer that as we come to the end of the interview. Another thing, if you feel it's something that you're not able to answer at that point, I've seen candidates say that, is it okay if I get back to you with a detailed answer to that question at the end of the day? So then if you say at the end of the day, then make sure the moment you leave that interview before the day ends, you're able to send an email with the response to that question. Another very good trick that are very clever and very well-prepared and intelligent candidates would use is that twisting that question. You can either twist it and respectfully maybe just throw it back to an employer, especially if it's a question that it's a universal question, maybe a question about the company, or you can twist it and instead maybe appearing like you don't know anything, you can maybe bring up something that you really know that is relevant to that question, but really never say I don't know or never say I can't answer that. The next one is never mention things or never mention statements that shows you have no knowledge about the job or the organization. And I'll give you an example of these statements. Some of these statements will be like a candidate gets, and this happens mostly with candidates maybe that have been referred. Maybe there's somebody you know in that company that was recruiting and they had forwarded your CV. So when you're called for an interview, of course, at the point that you're called for an interview, you can, of course, the person who is calling you, or rather when they're calling you for an interview, they'll mention the job title. But in some instances, well, you might have not really understood it well. So you find candidates getting into an interview and someone begin asking, what is the correct title of this job? Or even if you show lack of knowledge about the organization, like, what does this organization do? I think that's the least thing you can really ask. Get into an organization, even if somebody came to you and they kept maybe asking you, even especially if you had introduced yourself and they keep on asking you like, what did you say is your name again? Also, what did you say you do? Also, right, you see, when somebody really asks you that, especially if someone was to interview you and they ask you that, so you'll sort of feel like they have not taken time to know much about you. That's also how the interviewers will feel if you keep on asking, also, what products does this company deal with? Also, what are the main competitors? While these are information, these are public information. Get into Google social media platforms, there are social media handles, look for a company and you'll be able to get every information about them. So if you get to an interview, please never mention, or rather never talk in a way that it shows you do not understand the organization or you do not understand the job that you're interviewing for. So this will really show that you did not do enough research about the job, you did not do sufficient research about the company. And really, if you cannot research about the company, especially at the time that you're looking for the job, then it's a clear indication that you're really not interested in helping this employer get to where they want to get to, but rather you're just interested about. The next thing you should never mention is when you're asked a question about something that is in your CV, the least you should never mention is say that it is in my CV. And I see that happen, and you'll agree with me that some candidates get to a level, especially if you ask them, like for instance, if you ask them, so what is your background, which school did you go to, what did you score maybe in high school, what was your undergraduate course, then of course it's clearly in the CV. Someone will just say it's in my CV. Apart from just this statement appearing very rude, it shows that you are agitated, and of course you cannot take maybe challenges. And the best thing you want to do is to talk about yourself and even be able to show an employer the other side of you that is not reflected in the CV. This will include things like coming out confidently. You see, those are not things that someone can see from your CV, but from the way that you will be able to speak, being a good speaker, being articulate, being eloquent and all that. These are things that the interviewer will only be able to see when you begin speaking. But if you're asked a question that will give you a chance to demonstrate those good skills and an interviewer is looking for, and you say that they're in my CV, honestly, it will really come out as very rude, and I'm not sure that is the character or that's an attribute that any job seeker would want to display at the point of the interview. Next are those statements that downplay your experience for the job. And I'll give you the examples of this statement. One of them, which I find people use a lot, is a statement like, while I know I am not very experienced for this job, I am really willing to learn. While I might not be the best candidate, if given a chance, I will learn very quickly on the job. You know, you're already in a conversation where the main thing is to sell yourself, and you're saying, while I might not be the best candidate. Me, I always believe when you're going to an interview, you go there as the best candidate. You might not really be the best, but the way you are going to sell your skill, the way you're going to sell your value to an employer should actually tell that you're the best candidate. So avoid these statements that really downplay your experience, skill, and fit for the job. So if you begin to second guess yourself, really, what would you want the employer to do. So instead of using such statements like, while I know I'm not the best experience for this job, while I know I might not really have worked in this job before, and this happened mostly for maybe fresh graduates or job changers which might have not had an exposure in that role. But instead of mentioning this statement, what you need to say when asked a question that may lead you to answering like that, what you need to say is talk about your transferable skills. I always believe that every person has transferable skills that can translate or that can be used in 1 or 2 jobs. So mention those transferable skills and how they position you to be able to give value in this job. Another thing, you can show your interest and passion for the job and a great enthusiasm for the job, just to show the employer that, because at the end of the day, when a panel is interviewing you, they already know that you might not be the best person in terms of skills, experience, and exposure for that job. But how you display your skills, the attitude with which you will maintain throughout the interview, the enthusiasm, the passion, the energy that you bring on board will really impress and just make someone know that while they might not be the best person, I know this person with the right attitude, they can do that job. The next thing you should never mention is, I don't have a question. How do you even get into an interview room without having a question? Because somebody has been taking their time to interview you, to question you for even 30 minutes. Then when it gets to your time to ask a question, you say, I do not have a question. So please always, I've done so many videos. I've done videos on the best questions that you can ask during an interview. You can check them up here. So you can always ensure that when you're going to an interview, you have at least 2 to 3 relevant questions that you're going to ask the panel, so that when you're asked this question, you don't say things like, I don't have a question. Please never ever fail to ask a question. While it is not mandatory, it is a good thing to ask a question, because what this does, it shows your interest for the job, it shows that you're prepared for this interview, it shows that you're interested in the company, and it further helps the panel to assess you, and definitely just makes you stand out and be ahead of the competition during an interview process. The next thing, never ever sound unprofessional in the interview. So you've been interviewed for 30 minutes, the interview is going on well, you're seeing the panel, of course, making those expressions, nodding, and really showing that you're answering the questions correctly. There is a temptation to begin to become familiar with the panel, which may happen even, which really happens unconsciously. Please remember where you are. You are in a job interview, a very formal conversation. While I'm not saying that you should not be easy, you should not be authentic, you should not be natural, you should not tell stories. It's okay to tell stories, but really keep it professional. Don't begin to overshare. Don't begin to tell them what you like, what you do out, unless it is asked, maybe like, what are your hobbies and interests, you can mention, but don't begin to mention things that are very personal. The moment you begin, remember, even during that conversation, even if an interview goes for 1 hour, the panel is still assessing you. Even that last minute is still being used for an assessment to make a decision about you for this interview. So remember to always keep it professional. Don't use inappropriate language, don't begin to use slangs and all that. So always ensure that you really maintain professionalism throughout the interview conversation. The next thing you should never mention in an interview are statements that shows that you're desperate. These statements could be like, I really need this job, please just hire me. If I don't get this job, it will really be a bad thing towards my career move. Nobody wants to hire someone who is desperate, guys. Please don't show an employer that you're desperate. You're in a room where you're in a position, or rather in a conversation, where what is expected of you is to sell your value, and the value that the employer will be able to get if they hire you. Never ever show an employer that you're desperate for a job. So avoid those statements that I've mentioned. Instead of mentioning those statements, always through the conversation, sell yourself in terms of skills, in terms of experience, relevance to the job, the value that you'll be able to bring, the upper hand that you have that will make you a good fit and ahead of every other person who's being interviewed for that job. The next things you should never mention is outdated stories. And outdated stories, the most common examples that I see candidates are using is when you ask someone a question, and I'll give this question of maybe a question that will tell me about yourself, or tell us about yourself. Someone will begin with those stories of, oh, you know, I was born in this village in 80 something. I come from a family of 4. I come from a... While that is really you, I don't really think it's important for an interview. And also remember, each and every interview is timed. So the better you're able to share valuable information within the shortest time, the better it is for you to really convince a panel that you're the best for this candidate. Another example of outdated stories are those achievements that you had in the last 10 or 15 years. Always keep it to achievements or experiences that you've had in the last 5 years. It's very relevant, and more focus on what you've had, the achievements that you have had in your current job. So make it more current. Please don't deviate and begin sharing stories from 1990 something. They might be good because they are really they're the ones that have really formed part of who you are, but I really don't think if there will be much time to share all that. And I really also don't think that if the person that you were 15 years ago is truly the person that you are still now, because you've really grown in terms of skills, you've really grown in terms of experience, you've really grown in terms of exposure, and you can do much more than you could do 15 years down the line. So really it is quite important that you make it so current, so that you only share what is relevant to the job, and again, what will put you in a better position to be the best candidate. The last thing, guys, is to avoid using cliches. So cliches are words that have been used over and over, and they are considered overused. So most likely, if you use a cliche like something, for instance, if you're asked this question of what is your weakest weakness or what is your weakest strength, so mostly what you'll find candidates saying is, most candidates answer that question just the same way, and most candidates will just say, one of my greatest weakness is that I'm a perfectionist. A panel might have been interviewing 5 people, and like the last 4 or 3 have said the same thing. So what this does, if you use a cliche like maybe a perfectionism in this stage, what it does is that it shows a panel that this was a memorized answer. It does not bring out the authentic person that you are. I'm not saying that perfectionism might have not been your weakness. It might truly be your weakness, but just maybe instead of using the same word, you can give a scenario that will automatically bring out this weakness. So guys, avoid using these cliches, these words, even in your CV. I think even in the CVs, these cliches that people use, things like result oriented, I am self-driven. I am really look for words that are authentic, words that truly describe who you are, instead making a conversation look very generic, or even making a CV look very generic. So I've also done a video on some of the things that you should never ever include in your CV, or the things that you need to remove in your CV. You can watch it up here, and I've included this part again of the overuse of cliches, or the cliches that you should really now stop using in your CV, because they've been used over and over again. I think it's time that we begin giving a fresh touch to our job application tools, how we interview, and just trying to get to the level that you're really unique even when you're getting to a job interview. So this brings me to the end of this today's conversation. Thank you for watching till the end. I want to believe that this video has added value to you. You've gained something from this content, and you're going to do it better next time you get yourself in a job interview. As always, in this channel, I'm all about educating you, walking your job search journey with you, walking your career journey with you, just to help you to build a rewarding and fulfilling career. And for that reason, if you've not subscribed, consider hitting the subscribe button so you join this community where we're all about learning. Thank you for watching. I'll see you in the next video.